Alright, so welcome back to another top 10. And today, we're gonna talk about the Ice type. The Ice type is a rather interesting typing to me, all things considered. It has lost Hail recently and gained Snow, which offers a physical defense buff to the Ice type, which is neat. But I think the real meat and potatoes to this type comes from the fact that while it has one of the worst defensive typings in the game, it's offensively very potent. And when I say worst defensive typings, I mean the fact that its only resistance is itself. Now, as per all underrated Pokemon, they have a quota to fill. Either as a design, they don't get much love and attention, the Pokemon can definitely do something in battle, yet doesn't see as much competitive use as it could, or it's simply never discussed or talked about to the point where it's easy to forget that it exists. Also, as always, Mystic Reads, fanfics, Road to be a Pokemon Master, Mystic Umbreon Shorts, exclusive daily Pokemon content, and remember to comment what type you want me to cover next. The one with the most upvotes will be the one I cover next time. Without further ado, let's begin. Despite being the first of the trio, it is definitely not number one. Articuno is admittedly a rather underwhelming Pokemon, especially for a legendary. Now, I think the biggest issue with this Pokemon is the same issue I have with all defensive Ice types ever. Why? Why did you make the weakness latent Pokemon with only 2 resistances, and I suppose the nifty ground immunity, a defensive Pokemon? I don't get it. If Articuno were faster and had more special attacks, it would definitely be better off, especially since Zapdos and to some extent Moltres are better defensive Pokemon thanks to Static and Flame Body, which is much superior to Articuno's Snowcloak. So why do I think it's underrated? Well, let's simply stop comparing it to its other birds for just a second and look at the merits that Articuno does have. First of all, banger design. I love the cool mystic look that it sports. It's elegant, beautiful, and almost serene even. In battle, I think that Articuno has the tools to be an excellent utility Pokemon. With access to Freeze Dry to threaten out bulky water types, alongside Defog, Heal Bell, Roost, and Toxic, and the screen moves, I think it makes an excellent utility Pokemon, if you can play around the rather devastating weakness it has. Just don't forget to put on your boots. Ah yes, Cynthia. She is widely regarded as one of, if not the best champions in the Pokemon games. Her roster of Pokemon are some of the most iconic or interesting in the franchise. Roserade, Lucario, Gastrodon, or Togekiss depending on the version you play. There's Spiritomb who is underrated, and you should watch why in the Dark type video. There's the iconic Garchomp who has been good since its release. And there's the Pokemon you probably struggled the least with on her team, being Glaceon. Glaceon is on her Pokemon World Tournament team in Pokemon Black and White 2. Glaceon has the unfortunate problem of not really being good on any type of team because its stat distribution is bizarrely wonky. Ice is a horrendous defensive type. Why is it slow and defensive? So instead of talking about it competitively, let's talk about how it stands in regards to its fellow Eevees. It doesn't. It and Flareon are probably tied for the least popular evolution, and well, someone has to be the runt of the litter. I actually personally really love Glaceon. I love all my evolution counterparts. The most it really has going for it is its popularity at ski resorts and a really high special attack stat for strong ice beams and blizzards. Ice Body is nice in hail though, since passive recovery is always good. Avalugg. Oh, poor Avalugg. Even with the Hisuian form, you're gonna be overlooked, which is an honest shame. This coffee table has the undesirable ice typing to go along with what is pretty amazing physical bulk, but while it does fall short in some key areas, it isn't a bad Pokemon per se. It's just got some really steep competition. But hear me out, right? Curse for setup, Body Press or Gyro Ball depending on what you need, Avalanche for stab, and Recover to keep going. Surely it's got a niche as a bulky sweeper, right? Okay, yeah, it's gimmicky, but what else do you really expect here? Now, with that said, that silly little setup isn't all Avalugg does. It's a rapid spinner so that you can clear hazards from your field, an ice spinner to clear terrains so that Indeedee and Pinkerton teams aren't blasting through you. And for an ability, you get options like Sturdy for a guaranteed survival, or Ice Body to become even more resilient in snow thanks to passive recovery and the added defense boost. There is untapped potential for Avalugg. Just don't use the Hisuian Avalugg though. He's hopeless. Terrible even. I will never forgive Game Freak for making Hisuian Avalugg this horrendous in the type department. So next up is Jinx. This is a pretty interesting Pokemon all things considered on many different fronts, but it's not a bad Pokemon in the slightest. I'd argue it's actually got a rather solid niche as a Pokemon. Lovely Kiss having 75% accuracy is actually amazing, especially when backed by a base 95 speed. Sure, 95 isn't that fast, at least nowadays, but it isn't slow either. Jinx is arguably a solidly fast and reliable sleep user, and being able to put what could be a potentially irritating wall to sleep may be game-changing. Of course, that's not all she does. Offensively, it has amazing potential to be used on some solid team ideas. With Expanding Force, it could find rather interesting use on Psychic Terrain teams. And with Dry Skin, which heals it in rain and gives it a full-on water immunity, Life Orb Recoil suddenly becomes less problematic. I've been messing around with it myself recently, and it's a pretty okay Pokemon in the rain. I remember a time when I used to absolutely despise Vanillux, but those times have changed. Arcastelia-shaped friend was gonna be higher on the list, but I took a moment and thought to myself that at this point, it's not as underrated as it used to be. I've seen more people backing Vanillux now than there were back in the day when it was one of the gripes people had with Pokemon Black and White, myself included. Now, it actually gets some sparse usage. While Alolan Ninetales will always be the definitive #1 until they introduce a Snow Warning Settler with the higher speed stat, Vanillux in my eyes slots perfectly as a #2 for the Aurora Veil setting niche. It's not faster, but it is bulkier on the physical side and slightly less bulky on the special side. But Aurora Veil isn't all it does. With Ice Body for passive recovery and hail and access to Atomize, it can make quite the offensive threat. Or, if you want to skip setup entirely, it has access to Weak Armor too, to give it speed for taking a physical hit. The only real issue is the coverage, with your only non-ice moves you actually want to use being Flash Cannon, Signal Beam, or the ever so intriguing Water Pulse in case you want to surprise a fire type expecting to force a switch. Now, I firmly believe that Glacier reserves the right to be on this list. Chilling Neigh is an excellent ability, which admittedly is just Moxie, but with a cooler name. It also has excellent stats, being an incredible solid bulky attacker. I could only imagine the use it could see on Trick Room, due to that jarringly low speed. The only issue with this, of course, is the fact that it's burdened by the Ice type. We've all talked about it before, but the Ice type is just irredeemably frail for a bulky Pokemon. But hey, at least lore-wise, it's pretty cool. It has a mask of ice covering its face that is 100 times harder than Diamond. And anything it wants, it takes by force. By all accounts, Glacier is a menace. It's just a shame that one of the few things it can't take by force is a shot in Ubers alongside Spectrier. Or just OU for that matter. And even UU, from what my research is telling me. If only it had more resistances. Despite not being the ghost of the horse duo, it lives in Spectrier's shadow. It's honestly a shame. Every day, I wake up and I wondered to myself, why did Mr. Rime lose his speed when evolving from Galarian Mr. Mime? I don't understand it. Imagine how amazing this jolly old fellow would be if he was actually faster on evolution. Actually, can I just briefly ask, why? Why do they do this? Look into it. A lot of Pokemon that get evolutions in later gens lose speed. My favorite example is Electivire, because there was just zero justification for it being slower than Electabuzz. They just did it. Regardless, back to why Mr. Rime is underrated. Well, he actually has an incredibly set of abilities that I believe makes him a solid asset to have around if you can fit him on a team. Screen Cleaner can remove screens from your opponent's field, and Ice Body can... well, how many times can I say Ice Body in this video in hindsight? He's got pretty solid coverage options too, alongside access to Rapid Spin to remove hazards. The only issue is that with the base 70 speed stat and not the world's greatest defenses to compensate, it's gonna be really hard to get Mr. Rime going. But it can definitely be worth it. Also, let's just be honest with ourselves here. Mr. Rime is one of the best Galar designs. He has a cane, a top hat, a goofy mustache, and not only does he talk the talk, but he most certainly walks the walk. Now, odds are, this is just coming from a Frostmoth enjoyer, but this Pokemon, in my eyes, is part of the definition of underrated. I think it's mostly definitely one of the best users of the new Terrastalize mechanic, because Ice Scale's basically doubling its special defense, and Water being one of the best bulky types could make Frostmoth a rather potent user of Quiver Dance. Or, if you really want to be silly, with Auroraville, Ice Scales, and Snow combined, all buffing your defenses, you could have a surprisingly tanky ice monster setting up Quiver Dances and sweeping teams outright, albeit hard to pull off. When you get it off though, that's a serious advantage. Its biggest issue as a Quiver Dancer, outside of the obvious competition being better than it in almost every regard, is the speed. And just like Volcarona, the ×4 Stealth Rock weakness forcing it onto boots. Base 65 speed means you'll be needing to set up more than one Quiver Dance if you want to outspeed, and that can be exploited. It's absolutely worth pulling off though. Poor Arctivish. I have never met an Arctivish lover in my life. I've seen obvious Dracovish fans because Dracovish is a demon. I'm a Dracozolt fan myself, because clicking Bolt Beak mindlessly when playing Sand is one of my favorite hobbies, the literal moment my opponent's ground type faints. I've seen Arctizolt fans for the same reason as why I like Dracozolt, but for Slush Rush purposes backed by Auroraville to make Arctizolt scarily hard to kill. But then there's Arctivish. Despite access to Slush Rush and Vicious Rend, it doesn't seem to get the same love and attention that Arctizolt does. And quite frankly, I don't see why. Okay, that's just not fair, Game Freak. Regardless, I think that Arctivish can still be used. It's just got tough competition for a team slot. And just like in the recent Dark-type video, rather than doing honorable mentions, we're gonna clear up Pokemon that aren't underrated and instead are just perfectly rated. These guys are simply just bad, as unfortunate as it is. Dugong wishes it was Lapras, and it will never be Lapras, and is one of the most uncreative designs in Pokemon in my opinion. Aurorus is slow, has 2 ×4 weaknesses, and doesn't hit anywhere near as hard to compensate. And Glalie? Glalie got its time in the sun in Gen 5 when it used Moody to commit war crimes. If it needed that broken ability to be viable, it never deserved the ability at all. Okay guys, so hear me out. Right, so Delibird has a base 136 speed stat and a base 124 special attack stat. With the water and ice typing, access to freeze dry for killing waters, ice beam for other stab, flip turn for switch momentum, and hydro pump for high power, I don't know why it isn't used. And I'm clearly joking, it's Iron Bundle. You got me there. Now on to the real number 1. I'll be honest when I say that this poor Pokemon is just a victim of bad game design. The only way to get this Pokemon in its original game, Sun and Moon, is to go to Mount Lanakila and level it up there. Mount Lanakila is on Ula Ula Island, which is not accessible until the latter half of the game. By this point, you've probably already built your team, and slotting it in your team has become not worth it unless you really like Crabominable. Sure, it's at least got to be Kofu's ace, and its evolution condition became the Ice Stone, making getting it more feasible. Now, I most definitely think Crabominable is underrated. The Ice and Fighting type combination are entirely unique to it. Hammer Arm and Ice Hammer are great stabs, both boosted by Iron Fist, and thanks to the speed lowering, it can be phenomenal in Trick Room with the right support. The issue is really that Melmetal has the same ability, and Double Iron Bash is just really, really good. So Melmetal is an easy to use staple, and Crabominable is pretty niche. As for its design, it's a happy, derpy ice crab monster who also happens to swing its pincers indiscriminately and launch them like rockets. Perhaps I was wrong. Avoid it at all costs. Well, those are the top 10 most underrated ice types in my opinion. I wish these mons would get more love, especially with how Game Freak did the ice type dirty. Oh well, this list was still fun to make though. What about you guys? What do you think of the list? Which ice Pokemon do you think are underrated? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, as well as let me know what typing you'd like to see next time. Remember, the typing with the most upvotes will be the one we do next. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching my content. With Scarlet and Violet DLC on the way, we have a lot to be excited for. Not just that though, but I've got a bunch of other cool series planned throughout the year that I'm sure you guys will love. If you want to support my other forms of content, over on Mystic Reads, I read fanfics. One of them right now is Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto Edition, where Ash and Serena start from the very beginning and journey through Kanto together. On Mystic Umbreon Shorts, I do other exclusive Pokemon content such as Pokemon Facts, and on Saturdays I upload my top 5 favorite Pokemon of a type. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an excellent day.